Chapter 1166, Skeleton. When Lu Shu saw a herd of antelopes, he was excited. He did not dare to approach the cows that ate lightning, but there was nothing to fear with these cute antelopes jumping about. He caught all of them and stored them in the Seal of Lands. During the battle on the tiger's back, Lu Shu had tested out the environment in the Seal of Lands. When he stored resources and people in the Seal of Lands, almost everyone had suffocated and died. Only 3 people had survived as they had oxygen cylinders. Lu Shu realized that if he stored a large amount of air from the earth in the Seal of Lands, animals could also survive in the Seal of Lands. The Seal of Lands was much bigger than any invisible storage equipment Lu Shu had seen. For example, Lu Xiaoyu's invisible storage equipment only had the space of a small building. But Lu Shu's Seal of Lands had never been full. Suddenly, Lu Shu thought about it. If he could fill the Seal of Lands with conditions that would allow organisms to live, would he be able to create a new world? But he quickly understood. It was easy to allow organisms to survive inside, but creating a complete food chain would be very difficult. There were too many elements of life that could not be fulfilled in the Seal of Lands. Wait. Lu Shu was dumbfounded. He had entered the celestial map before. Back then, he felt that the celestial map was vast and boundless. Could he create a new world from the celestial map? When Lu Shu thought about this, he was excited. It was not impossible. In reality, Lu Shu had never seen the celestial map as a space. He felt that it was a system of techniques. But when he thought about, even the head of the sword hut could enter the celestial map. What else was impossible? Lu Shu looked around, but did not display his excitement. But Israel and the rest suddenly felt the wind blowing. It was very weak, but mysterious. Lu Shu was shocked. The celestial map was a space. Had he been able to explore a new space all along? But it was not the time to think about this. Lu Shu led the group of people away from the source of water. No one objected, as Lu Shu had scared them with the possibility that other creatures might come to drink water. The group of ordinary people could not handle the creatures in the remains. But they did not realize that when they left the water source, some creatures who had been hiding ran out. When they confirmed that Lu Shu had left, they finally came to the source of water. They harmoniously lowered their heads and drank. They did not disturb one another when they drank water. Even the predators did not try to attack other creatures. This scene was very interesting. It was as if they had lived here for a long time and established some form of chemistry. They were very thirsty, but did not dare to go over when Lu Shu was sitting there. They had all seen how Lu Shu had chased and caught the antelopes. The entire herd was gone in a flash. It was far too frightening. Once they were done drinking, the creatures looked at one another and left. They did not head in the direction where Lu Shu had headed. It was as if they were avoiding Lu Shu. Their gaze seemed to carry a message. There is a new demon king. Be careful. The remains were very strange. Lu Shu did not know where these creatures had come from. He had not revealed the truth behind the remains either. To Israel and the rest, no matter whether it was the scorpions or the cows, they were all beasts. It was very dangerous. But to these creatures, Lu Shu was the true beast. Of course, Lu Shu did not completely relax. He knew that there were definitely frightening creatures like the tortoise in the remains. Furthermore, 80% of these creatures would not be as docile as the tortoise. At night, they hid in a cavern that was not very deep. It was more like a cave dwelling than a cave. Lu Shu lifted up a torch. He looked inside the cavern. The boundless wilderness was engulfed in darkness. This was their second night together. Lu Shu curiously asked the rest, "What other dangers have you encountered in the remains?" They had slept on the tortoise on the first night. Dangers might not have dared to approach them, but it was different tonight. When one of the girls heard Lu Shu, she looked shocked. We did not encounter any danger on the first night, but we heard a rustling sound in the distance. It sounded like densely packed shells hitting against one another. I think that some kind of insect is marching. Lu Shu was dumbfounded. It would be troublesome if insects appeared at night. If insects appeared in large groups in the wilderness, they were probably army ants. There were many ordinary people in the remains. If the girl had heard army ants, many ordinary people would have been dead. Lu Shu thought about it and extinguished the bonfire. They had to be more cautious at night. A weak ray of light shone into the cavern. Lu Shu sat by the entrance, thinking about someone. Suddenly, the female practitioner came over and said, "I have an outdoor tent set in my bag. I've set it up for you. Go to sleep." Lu Shu was dumbfounded. He smiled. "There's no need. You should go to sleep." The female practitioner was somewhat disappointed. She nodded and went back into the cavern. Israel laughed softly. "She is rather pretty. Aren't you moved?" She took the initiative. "Do a lot of female practitioners approach you in the remains?" Lu Shu thought about it. "Quite a lot of them do. Not only do female practitioners approach me, ordinary females as well." Israel's expression changed. According to what she knew, this was the only time so many ordinary people had appeared in the remains. Was he talking about her? From Israel Moore's Distress, plus 748. "You're just a rank 5 practitioner. Why are you so arrogant?" Then, Israel went into the cavern to sleep. But she looked at Lu Shu, who was guarding the entrance of the cavern, and could not sleep. At that moment, someone in the cavern screamed. The sound of a female screaming at night was exceptionally clear. Lu Shu furrowed his eyebrows and asked, "What's wrong?" I think there's a skeleton here," said one of the females. Lu Shu went in and took a look. As expected, there was a pile of bones in the cavern. It seemed like the bones had been buried here for a very long time. But Lu Shu was shocked. Seeing bones in the remains was nothing new, but this was his first time seeing a human skeleton. It was evidently a human. Lu Shu brushed away the soil on the bones. When he saw the skull, he confirmed that the skeleton belonged to a person who had died in the remains. The creatures he had encountered that were most like humans were the soldiers of the sea, but they were not as shocking as seeing a human skeleton. The creatures in the remains were complex and diverse. It was like a complete, ancient world. Had humans lived here as well? What kind of humans had lived in the remains? Chapter 1167, Soul Hidden in the Skeleton. Lu Shu had never thought that native people would appear in the remains because they had never ever appeared in the past. Baimang remains, Salt Lake remains, Lopner remains, Kochang Island remains. No humans had ever appeared in those remains which Lu Shu had been to. The closest species to humans were the soldiers from the sea. However, the soldiers from the sea were extremely different from humans. Lu Shu said to others, "Is anyone here medically trained?" One of the female practitioners raised her hand weakly. "Before I became a metahuman, I was a nurse." "Can you tell if this is a human skeleton?" asked Lu Shu curiously. The female practitioner was about to cry. "It looks very similar to a human's." Lu Shu was stunned. "What do you mean?" "When I was in medical school, I have learned it before, but I was not hardworking and hence went to urology after graduation," explained the female practitioner. Lu Shu was speechless. What on earth was urology? At this moment, Lu Shu was certain that the skeleton belonged to a human, but he wanted to confirm it through an expert's opinion. What made him curious was, if there were native people in this remains, how would they treat foreign humans? Would they view them as friends or enemies? How powerful would they be? Lu Shu would not be worried if there were only creatures in the remains. However, when the word humans were mentioned, he was suddenly worried. At this moment, Lu Shu realized that he was more afraid of humans than creatures. By right, he should feel a sense of familiarity when he met humans in the remains. However, Lu Shu found it hard to do so as the most dangerous thing in the world were humans. Israel and the rest got nervous after seeing Lu Shu's reaction. To her and the rest, the skeleton was nothing special. Although it looked frightening, it was normal for people to die in the remains, right? At this moment, the mindset of the group of ordinary people had slowly changed. They had to get used to the cruelty in the remains to survive. However, they were not as experienced as Lu Shu and did not know that it was unusual for natives to appear in the remains. Yet now, although in their minds Lu Shu was not that strong, everyone had unintentionally placed all their bets on Lu Shu. If Lu Shu was so nervous, how could they not be nervous? Israel was nervous. Is there anything wrong? What happened to this human skeleton? Lu Shu frowned. Something's wrong. Israel and the rest got even more nervous. What is wrong? Lu Shu said calmly, he is naked. Israel and the rest were astonished. What a lame joke to make at this point in time. His clothes had already decomposed long ago. At this moment, Lu Shu suddenly stretched out his hand and put it over the helicopter pilot's neck before lifting him up from the ground. He said coldly, "Who are you?" In the previous wave of distress points, Lu Shu suddenly realized that the helicopter pilot's name was not in the records. Initially, Lu Shu could feel that there was a weak wave of energy when the skeleton was excavated. However, he did not manage to find out what happened in the end. After confirming with the records, Lu Shu had confirmed that the helicopter pilot had lost consciousness, and the skeleton's soul had possessed the pilot's body. Lu Shu had heard about spooky stories before. For example, when walking in the cemetery with a friend, the friend could possibly end up not being the original friend. However, this was ineffective for Lu Shu as he could do a real name verification. Israel and the rest looked at Lu Shu shockingly. Are you insane? He is George. Don't you know him? Lu Shu shook his head. To put it accurately, he was Lu Kongming. How did you find out? The pilot was able to talk carefreely despite having his neck strangled by Lu Shu. However, his voice was no longer the original voice of the pilot. Moreover, what shocked Israel and the rest the most was the fact that the pilot suddenly began to speak in Mandarin. Initially, they were suspicious. However, when the pilot began to speak in fluent Mandarin, they realized that Lu Shu was not lying and trying to find an excuse to kill someone. However, how did Lu Shu find out? Israel and the rest could only credit this to the magical abilities of a practitioner. Meanwhile, the female practitioner did not speak as she knew about it. Both Lu Shu and herself were rank E, but she did not realize that anything was wrong. In fact, the female practitioner looked up to Lu Shu because she found out that Lu Shu was not rank E. How could a rank E practitioner remain so calm in the remains? I am asking you a question, why are you asking me instead? Sneered Lu Shu. Lu Kongming suddenly started laughing. You don't seem to know who you are talking to. Suddenly, he pressed his hands on Lu Shu's arm and started using strength from his palms, attempting to break Lu Shu's bones. However, with that power, nothing had happened. From Lu Kongming's distress, plus 666. Lu Kongming looked astonished. Lu Shu said calmly. Then tell me, who am I talking to? Looks like I have underestimated you, sneered Lu Kongming again. Then, the skeleton suddenly stood up and using his bones as a knife, he aimed at Lu Shu's temples. Lu Shu, with his right hand holding Lu Kongming, used his other hand to disintegrate the knife into powder. Lu Shu looked at Lu Kongming. This? From Lu Kongming's distress, plus 666. Now, I am asking you a question. If you don't want to perish, speak the truth, said Lu Shu calmly. Lu Kongming was poised. You mean? Although Israel and the rest could not understand Mandarin, they realized that Lu Kongming's attitude suddenly changed and became nice to Lu Shu. Was this what was meant by a rapid change in attitude? At this moment, Lu Kongming saw how Israel and the rest were about to cry. Why were they acting like that? Shouldn't he be the one who was surprised? How did he manage to randomly bump into a powerful practitioner? He was observing this group of people while hiding in the skeleton. He realized that the group of people were afraid of the remains. Therefore, Lu Kongming was confused. Since you are so powerful, why are you hiding in the cave with this group of ordinary villagers? Lu Shu glanced at the ordinary people and said after realizing that they did not understand Mandarin, "Why are you still able to keep your soul?" "Because my master has a way to keep souls," said Lu Kongming honestly. Chapter 1168, This is too much. Lu Shu frowned. He had a master. So there existed many more humans in the remains? At this moment, Lu Shu thought about another absurd possibility. Perhaps there were a large number of humans in the remains and even towns? Have you heard of the 4 lords of heaven? Lu Shu was becoming more brazen in his questions. Since Israel and the rest could not understand Mandarin, he asked everything he suspected. Then, Lu Kongming was suddenly confused. What Lord of Heaven? Lu Shu sneered, "You don't know? Then you can go and die." I know. Lu Kongming said anxiously. What's the name of the West Lord of Heaven? If you can't answer, you will die, said Lu Shu coldly. Then, Lu Shu noticed that Lu Kongming was about to cry. The West Lord of Heaven is called Tom. I really don't know. What do you mean by the West Lord of Heaven? Lu Shu laughed. He felt that Lu Kongming was not lying. In that case, when did the remains get buried here? And where did these humans come from? Lu Kongming was an easy target. Lu Shu managed to obtain quite a lot of information from him. Lu Shu felt that he had finally met an easy target. Ever since he went to the palace, everyone who appeared seemed to be difficult targets and refused to say anything. In the past, Lu Shu made use of Little Fury's dream to find a slave owner spy in Yellowstone National Park. He kept it for Lu Xiaoyu to obtain the memory fragments. However, Lu Xiaoyu said that there was a layer of purple radiance surrounding the memory fragment and it broke apart upon touching. She could not read the memory fragments at all. Lu Shu realized that his opponent knew him very well and perhaps had figured out that he was able to obtain the memory fragments of others. He came prepared. However, because of that, Lu Shu was even more determined to kill him. That was because he knew that his opponent would not give in unless he died. Lu Shu looked at Lu Kongming. What about this body's soul? In deep sleep, said Lu Kongming carefully, because my mental strength is much stronger than his, he could not resist. You mean, in this world, apart from your clan, nobody else was able to use this skill? Asked Lu Shu. Yes, asked Lu Kongming, do you want to learn? If you can give me an hour's time to kill this person's soul, I will teach you. Lu Shu acknowledged and continued, then let me ask you another question, where are we? This is the Forbidden Land. I accidentally fell in and got trapped in this place, explained Lu Kongming. Lu Shu was stunned. He suddenly realized that they were only in a small part of the remains. It was a place where people called it the Forbidden Land. In fact, there was another less dangerous area outside of this Forbidden Land whereby more people gathered. Moreover, there was a border separating the two areas. Lu Kongming was unable to get out after entering the area and was killed by the creatures. Lu Kongming was a rank 2 practitioner and had pretty abnormal skills. Lu Shu had already obtained the information he needed. He was wondering how he could force the spirit out of Lu Kongming's body. I will count to 10 and you shall return to the skeleton, said Lu Shu. He wanted to force Lu Kongming back into the Seal of Lands. After all, on the one hand, he wanted to obtain information from Lu Kongming, on the other hand, he was afraid that he would be sabotaged when Lu Kongming could move freely. I refuse to go back. Lu Kongming screamed, my soul can't take this anymore. Too bad, you don't have a choice, said Lu Shu meanly. You either kill this person together with me, or I will not leave him, said Lu Kongming. Fine, said Lu Shu calmly before turning to Israel and the rest. Can you all leave the cave for a while? After Israel and the rest left, Lu Shu took out a box of stinky tofu and placed it under Lu Kongming's nose. Lu Kongming was instantly stunned. This is too much. After a few seconds, Lu Kongming suddenly shouted, I will go back. I will go back. From Lu Kongming's distress, plus 999. What an easy target, Lu Shu mumbled. If everyone on Earth was like him, Lu Shu would have a much better life. However, Lu Shu knew that some of the information that Lu Kongming gave him was false. For example, he was definitely lying when he said he accidentally fell in. Who would randomly fall into the infamous Forbidden Land? Who was he trying to fool? However, Lu Shu had his worries too. That was because Lu Kongming might be saying the truth when he said that he was trapped. Lu Shu did not even know where the border was. Lu Shu walked out from the cave. The smell of stinky tofu was very strong outside the cave. Israel and the rest looked at Lu Shu in shock. They could not imagine what had happened in the cave. Meanwhile, George, the helicopter pilot, woke up. After smelling the stinky tofu, he fainted again. Israel asked cautiously, how is he? Nothing much. Lu Shu smiled happily. Let's continue moving. At this moment, he did not want Israel and the rest to fall back into the cave as he did not want them to see that the skeleton had disappeared. While walking, Israel lowered her head and was deep in thought. She had definitely realized that Lu Shu was abnormal. She suddenly asked, what rank was the owner of the skeleton before he died? Rank 5, replied Lu Shu without thinking. No matter what, he should not exceed Lu Shu's current rank. However, Israel pouted in disbelief. Lu Shu did not bother about whether she believed it or not. Then, Israel suddenly said, you are actually an expert, aren't you? You are definitely not a rank 5, you should be a rank 3, right? Lu Shu's expression changed drastically. Don't tell anyone. Israel smiled to herself. Indeed, she was right. Israel became much happier thinking about this. They did not sleep for long that night. However, the special effect of the antelope meat had yet to subside and everyone was still extremely energized. After walking for about 3 hours, Lu Shu was stunned when he saw what was ahead. He saw modern tents. Moreover, there were more than one tent, it was practically an entire campsite. He could even see the bonfire and people sleeping on the ground. Someone built a wall using soil behind a mountain and seemed to have camped there for a long time. There were also people keeping guard behind the wall. When the ordinary people beside Lu Shu saw this, they were extremely excited and ran towards the campsite. Lu Shu did not stop them and followed quietly behind them. Chapter 1169, Campsite and Ranks. This time, everyone rushed over to the campsite. Israel, on the other hand, was not as rash. She followed them beside Lu Shu. Lu Shu was curious as he saw the crowd rush towards the campsite. Why aren't you rushing over with them, although you know that I am a rank 3? The campsite probably has several hundred people there and there would definitely be more than one rank 3 inside. The remains were exceptionally dangerous. Therefore, practitioners were forced to stay together despite belonging from different organizations. In fact, did humankind not live together to hunt and defend themselves from danger? As humans gradually ruled the world, their habit of living together did not change. Like an army of ants, the city was like an ant colony and had clear role allocations. A minority of the people thought that they could completely leave the group. However, that was only the minority. The people in the remains seemed to have gone back in time. They had to stay together to be able to defend against the ferocious creatures. The hard truth in the remains told them that they were not the rulers of the remains. Israel looked at Lu Shu. I feel that you are more reliable. Although you may not be as powerful as them, you have a good personality. Lu Shu smacked his lips. Then, he said, I think you should stay at the campsite. The campsite looked as if it had been attacked by creatures as the walls were damaged. Lu Shu also saw several enormous footprints that belonged to the creatures nearby. Therefore, the people in the campsite had experience dealing with creatures. Of course, Lu Shu felt that they had only met creatures who were rank 2 and below. Even a herd of wild cows could trample the entire campsite in minutes. After all, Lu Shu was afraid to offend the creatures who could eat lightning. At this moment, Lu Shu suddenly saw how Israel became dispirited. Just as Lu Shu was wondering what had happened, Israel said, Are you so desperate to get rid of me? Do you think that I am a burden? Lu Shu said without thinking. Yes. Israel was speechless. From Israel Moore's distress, plus 748. Israel turned over and wiped her tears secretly. Do you think I want to be like that? Everyone knew that the remains were dangerous. Is there anything wrong to find someone to protect me? I am so famous in the outside world, is there anything wrong for me to make use of my skills to live? Lu Shu did not speak. He was slightly stunned. Why did she suddenly explode with emotion? Israel continued, The world is like so, in order to protect oneself, one has to learn how to make use of resources, how to choose one's friends and how to source external help, right? I am only an ordinary person, I only want to live happily, I only want to be better than others, what's wrong with that? After hearing this, Lu Shu paused for a moment before replying, You are right. However, there's something which I cannot agree to. You shouldn't be sourcing for external help if you want to live a better life. Instead, you should strive to become more powerful, no matter how difficult and tiring that may be. After all, others' capability belongs only to them. You make it seem as though you are very powerful with that tone of an expert, but you are merely a rank 3, mumbled Israel. At this moment, she saw Lu Shu walking towards the campsite again and quickly followed behind him. Do you think there are those types of people in this campsite? Lu Shu knew what Israel was referring to, practitioners who suppressed ordinary humans. I am not sure. After all, one's ambitions could inflate, said Lu Shu. However, with such a big campsite, no matter how ambitious one was, one ought to keep it down a little. After all, everyone would make it out sooner or later. In the past, the 3 practitioners were extremely brazen as they wanted to kill everyone who knew about the matter. In that case, even if the remains ended, there were no repercussions. However, there were several hundreds of people in the campsite and it was impossible to kill all of them. Therefore, everyone had their guards up. The people in the campsite were alerted by the crowd who ran over. They came out from their tents or got up from the floor. Oh no! Lu Shu shouted. Suddenly, Israel saw Lu Shu sprint towards the campsite. She looked at Lu Shu in shock and confusion before looking at the campsite. What's wrong with the campsite? There's nothing wrong with the campsite, replied Lu Shu. Why are your colleagues carrying my sheep? Israel was speechless. Just a while ago, he was calm, and yet now, he was worrying about his sheep? What kind of person was he? Israel definitely could not understand. Lu Shu knew very well about the personalities of the practitioners. The remains had already been suffering from a scarcity of food, the sheep would definitely attract their attention. Although there was a flock of sheep in his seal of lands, Lu Shu thought that he should be thrifty and could not afford to lose even half of his sheep. Then, Israel saw Lu Shu run over and take back the sheep. Someone walked out of the campsite. Just by taking a glance, Lu Shu knew that more than half of the people in the campsite were ordinary people. Lu Shu took a sigh, the remains was a catastrophe for the ordinary people. They had to depend on luck to stay alive. At this moment, a black man with short black hair walked out and people around him made way for him. He stared straight at Lu Shu. To be exact, he was staring straight at Lu Shu's sheep and said, Were the sheep hunted by you guys? Yes, before Lu Shu could speak, someone took over. It was the colleagues of Israel acting as though they had captured the sheep. "How many ordinary people are there in your group?" asked the man with short hair. "Only 2 practitioners," someone answered, "however, their rankings are low, only rank 5. The person laughed. "If you give us the sheep, we will allow you guys to enter this campsite and be protected. However, the condition is, the practitioners have to hunt with us." Lu Shu was displeased. "Why should I give you the sheep?" "Because we found out about the secret of this remains and can keep you guys alive," said a practitioner beside the man. Lu Shu was stunned for a moment. Secret of the remains? He realized that the campsite seemed to have formed cliques led by the rank 2 short-haired man. Others looked at him quietly. However, Lu Shu did not care if the other party formed a clique or not. No matter what, they were still as weak as an ant. At least, that was what Lu Shu thought. He was only concerned about what secret the other party was referring to. "I will give you the sheep and you shall let us stay," said Lu Shu. Israel and the rest looked at Lu Shu gratefully, although they knew that the sheep were not hunted by them. Chapter 1170, Beneficiary. Lu Shu saw how the practitioners took away the animals and suddenly felt a sense of regret. How could this group of starving people look like they knew the secret of the remains? However, if they did not know about the secret, how could they lead these few hundreds of people to survive for days? Yesterday, when Lu Shu was hunting for the antelopes, Lu Shu had already discovered many creatures watching them. In fact, some of them were waiting to capture the antelopes but were killed by the sheep. If Lu Shu could make it in time, he would kill every single onlooker too. Therefore, there were many large-sized creatures in this remains. How did the low-ranked practitioners and ordinary people survive? Lu Shu followed them into the campsite in a low-profile manner. He discovered that although they were vigorously discussing about how to split the lamb, they did not let their guards down. The black man with short hair kept looking outside the wall as though he was worried that some creatures might barge into their campsite. Judging from this cautiousness alone, he was definitely not someone who entered the remains for the first time, nor was he an inexperienced candidate. However, this had nothing to do with Lu Shu, as he only wanted to know what the secret of the remains was. The ratio of ordinary men to women was about 1-to-1. Everyone sat on the ground helplessly. Ordinary people did not have tents to live in. Those who brought tents were practitioners who came prepared. On the other hand, the ordinary people were sleeping at home when the haze spread and they were completely unprepared. Moreover, the ordinary people did not have much self-defense capabilities. It made things worse as they did not bring anything with them. Lu Shu looked at a middle-aged man sitting beside him and asked, "How did you guys end up in the campsite?" The middle-aged man said helplessly, "We made a promise that we will pay them after we go out and we have to listen to them and help them do their work." "What if you are unable to pay them the amount they want?" asked Lu Shu. "Then we will be chased out," said the man. "Did they ever chase someone out before?" asked Lu Shu. "Yes, about 20 people were chased out because they were unwilling to comply with their demands," explained the middle-aged man. Lu Shu kept quiet for a moment. The people would die if they were chased out. How could the practitioners bear to do that? Lu Shu felt that he was not kind at all. In fact, he was a little selfish. However, in situations like this, he would help as much as possible. That did not mean that he was very caring, but rather it was a form of respect for life. What could be more important than a life? Of course, there were 2 sides to a coin. Those who were chased out did not seem to have a desire to live. At this point in time, they cared more about money than their lives and were unwilling to work. Perhaps, pitiful people had a reason to be hated too. This was rather conflicting. Lu Shu did not want to dwell on it too much and just wanted to lead his own life. When he turned around, he got a shock. Lu Shu looked at Israel in shock. "Why are you scaring people?" Israel's face was covered in dust and she looked dirty. Israel said as though she was wronged, "I am afraid that someone would remember me." "You are pretty smart." Lu Shu's praise was sincere. When he first met Israel, Israel wanted the entire world to notice her beauty, but now, she realized that her beauty might bring her trouble. Actually, this statement was not very accurate. Was there anything wrong with being pretty? The wrong was not in beauty but the person who made use of that beauty. However, many people put the blame on beauty itself and called women names like Helen of Troy. What was wrong with someone being pretty? Israel smiled to herself. I am definitely smart. Moreover, I think that those practitioners are not good people. At this moment, the antelope meat and mutton was grilled and cut. The black man said, all practitioners, come over and eat meat so you can work tomorrow. Amongst the group who just arrived with Israel, a photographer suddenly asked, then what about us? We don't get to eat? The leader laughed, the practitioners should be the ones eating meat used for physical recovery. Why do you guys need it? We will find food for you guys tomorrow. Why, that mutton belongs to us, the photographer said indignantly and wanted to snatch the mutton back. The leader punched him in the face and the photographer fell to the ground. The leader laughed, now, the mutton doesn't belong to you anymore. As he said that, he looked at everyone in the campsite. In this place, ordinary people have to serve the practitioners. Every woman has to serve one practitioner. I don't care about how you split the food. Men, on the other hand, have to work. Understand? The campsite was silent. The rules seemed to have been set a long time ago. The punch the leader threw was meant to scare the newcomers. However, Lu Shu did not pity them at all. After all, when they found the campsite, they abandoned Lu Shu immediately. Lu Shu could not wait to leave the group. However, he was not a Samaritan. If you decide to find someone else, then don't turn back. The famous relationship expert once said, if you decide to part ways, then part ways. Some of the practitioners went forward in joy to get their mutton. Then, Lu Shu saw one practitioner wave to a lady after receiving his mutton. He used a knife to cut a small piece for the lady and went back to his tent. Lu Shu looked at the other practitioners, all of them did the same thing. Actually, the practitioners had enough food. The extra was up to them to distribute. This was a hint for the practitioners to treat the ordinary people as slaves. Lu Shu suddenly felt that the leader was very smart. He made the practitioners loyal to him and he did not take all the benefits. Instead, he made everyone enjoy the benefits of order and protected the cruel order. The leader waved at Lu Shu. Come, get your mutton. After Lu Shu got his mutton, the leader smiled to him. You will easily assimilate with this group. We prepared an extra tent for you over there. He was trying to rope Lu Shu indirectly. He even made the effort to give Lu Shu significantly more mutton. Lu Shu acted as though he complied but was sneering in his heart. You are *king giving me my mutton. If I find out that your secret is not worth a sheep, I will beat you until your brain juices come out. Don't ask why half the sheep became one whole sheep, the excess is to make up for interest. When Lu Shu turned and walked back, he suddenly realized that many of the women in the campsite were looking at him quietly. To put it accurately, they were salivating after looking at the mutton in his hands. At this moment, Israel was sitting at a corner, feeling wronged. Lu Shu waved to her and Israel bit her lips before walking to the tent with Lu Shu. After entering the small tent, Israel suddenly started to take off her clothes. Lu Shu stopped her quietly, eat your mutton. I will chase you out if you take off your clothes. As he spoke, Lu Shu lay down. The tent was not very small. Lu Shu maintained about half a meter's distance away from Israel after lying down. Israel looked at Lu Shu in anger, am I not good-looking enough? Do you have someone else you like, is she prettier than me? Lu Shu gave it a thought. Yes, prettier than you.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, man, we just putting on a show. Try to look to the heavens to tell us things that we beg to know. Like, what did the song mean? There's no tomorrow.